Hello everybody. Today we're going to take a look at a Stanley number 122 Liberty Bell smooth plane. This plane was a complete restoration. There was no finish left on the wood and about 5% Japanning on the metal part. These are kind of a neat old plane. I don't know how popular they were, probably not very, because you don't see a lot of them. It was made 1876 to 1918. And it was a celebration of the Independence Day 100th anniversary. So there's a number 76 on the Liberty Bell, and that's how it gets its name. This one's kind of neat because the trademark on the iron is one that I've never seen before. It's really faint, so I'm going to try to get it to show up here. But I think you can see some of the dates right there. With the naked eye I can read it, but there are two dates on this thing. It's got the original date that Type 1 had, which is patented April 18th, 1876. Then the second date is patented April 19th, 1892. According to the type studies, this iron doesn't exist. So I don't know if it's rare or not. Don't know if we should be calling John Walters and put a hold on his book that he's redoing. But anybody out there that knows more than I do about this, chime in and let us all know. I think that's a pretty neat find. But as for the rest of it, it's all redone, ready to go back together, and we're going to give it a test. So you can see there's a lot of parts. I've knocked out all the pins, completely disassembled this thing, and redid it. So let's put it together. With this plane being different than most of the ones I've done videos on so far, I figured I'll put this one together step by step, not using the normal fast forward that I do. The first thing I want to put together is the top casting. I knocked out two pins, actually I knocked out one, the one that holds the frog adjustment assembly in, and then the pin that screws in that holds the lever cap in place. So the first thing I have to do is line the frog adjustment assembly back up where it's supposed to be, and then put this pin through here. So to put it together, this little tip right here has to fit inside a hole like that. Then I got to line up the hole that the pin goes through and drive it in. That's what I'm going to do right now. So I've got everything lined up. I've got the pin started in, and I found it wise from years of mistakes that it seems like one side is always slightly larger than the other. So find the smooth end of your pin that hasn't been hammered on and fit it on both sides. And mine always inevitably go in easier from one side than they do the other. So now I've got it started in, I'm going to set it down and tap it through the rest of the way. That's it. You don't want to be too aggressive because these cast iron little flanges right here, they can snap off. So now the depth adjuster is reinstalled. Next, I take this threaded rod and put it back in. Feed it through, clockwise turn, and then finish snugging it up with a screwdriver. And when you're done snugging it up, it should be pretty much flush on both sides. So the top casting is now reassembled, and it's ready to attach to the wood base. So I line it up, and first thing I do is take these small screws and put them back in. Sometimes you go to run these old screws back in, you'll find out that the holes are worn out and you don't get any grab of the threads. I found that an easy quick fix for that is to take a toothpick, or I have tons of these wooden Q-tips I use for cleaning the old tools. Stick it down inside the hole, snap it off, and then run your screw in. That's usually all it takes to get a good firm hold. Next up is to put the front knob on. You want to look at the direction of the grain of your knob. These old beech knobs sometimes are hard to see, it's misleading, but the direction of this one is running like this. So you want the direction of the grain running front and back with your plane, because it's less likely to break that way. Next thing to do is to reassemble the iron and the cap iron. This is where it gets complicated on these 76 planes. You got these extra pieces right here. This tiny little piece with that flat end is going to engage in the depth adjuster. There's a slot down here on the inside of the depth adjuster. It is right there. So the way that works is it obviously has to come through the bottom of your cap iron. So it goes in here like this. I start with it in the center, pretty much eyeball center of that slot right there, and then put the nut back on. No need to tighten anything up yet, just finger tighten it, because once that is on, then that's going to go on top of your iron. So that's how it comes through the slot. And notice how narrow that slot is. That's not going to work on a regular iron. Now we'll try this again. Set it about a 1/16 of an inch from the end of the cutting edge. And that part I can tighten up. Now what I want to do is see how it fits inside the plane. Alright, so it's centered, it's locked in, and that's pretty darn deep. So we know that's not going to work. So I ended up going maybe about 3/16 from the bottom of the notch, and that looks like it's going to be pretty good. Put it back in there. You can tell when you're in a notch because you don't get a whole lot of movement. And the last thing you want to do is put your lever cap back on. And that's it. And there we have a fine looking Stanley number 122. I figure this one was probably made somewhere in the Type 2 era, 1886 to 1891, because of that trademark on the iron, even though it's got both the Type 1 and 2 trademarks. So that's the oddity that we talked about. But here's a look at it. Turned out to be a beautiful little plane. There's a look at the marking on the front. Right side. And a look at the base. The only thing left to do other than drooling is to give it a test drive. My 1 5/8 inch piece of poplar's in the vise. I went ahead and got the iron set, which is not the easiest thing in the world to do on these. This is one where once you get it set, you want to leave it alone until it's time to sharpen it. But it is putting shavings up out the throat. My experience with these Liberty Bell planes has been they're not going to be a fine finished plane. It's hard to get your iron set. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's really difficult to get an iron set to where you can get those super fine shavings that you can with the regular iron planes. But it is obvious that it's a fine performer. Once she's been set up to use. That's it. Not the easiest, but I'd say it passed. I did forget to mention that you adjust your depth with this lever that's right inside here. Raise the lever up, iron goes down. Raise the lever down, the iron comes up. So the old Stanley 122 Liberty Bell smooth plane looks better than it performs. If it's the only plane you've got, it works. Other than that, I'd say it's a shelf sitter and it'll look good in somebody's collection. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I gotta see what's next off the pile. Recently added a Stanley 135 Type 2, so that's a pretty neat old plane. Or I'm sorry, it's a Stanley number 35 Type 2. So I'll get to that eventually, but I can't do it now because it's time for supper. Bye.